Welcome to People on Earth. Veld fires have become one of the greatest environmental challenges, causing massive damage to Zimbabwe's forests, animal habitat, infrastructure, agricultural lands, and even leading to loss of lives. To deliberate more on the impact, prevention, and management of Veld fires, we are joined in the studio by Mr. Liberty Mugadza, the Acting Principal Officer, Environmental Education and Publicity with the Environmental Management Agency. Mr. Wilson Chimwedzi, the Director of Firefight Trusts. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
It's a pleasure to be here, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so to begin with you, Mr. Mugadza, how do we describe Veld fires and why have they become so topical?
To begin with, let us start with the biogeographical setting of Zimbabwe. We are in the subtropical regions where we have got distinct wet and dry periods. And this develops the biome normally called savanna. Savanna biome, it has got woodlands, it has got grasslands. So what controls our ecosystem is we have got what we call the nutrients in the soil, then the climate. That is the primary determinants. Then we have secondary determinants, which is the animals that feed, which is herbivore and fire. Now, for us as Zimbabwe in the savanna biome, we have got very good nutrients in the soil, and our climate is very good for development of very robust vegetation, be it herbs, be it grasses, as well as trees. And remember, I said we have distinct wet and dry seasons. So most of our trees, they are deciduous. They shed their leaves during the dry season. Now, when we get into the hot season, we have got dry grass, dry leaves, which form good material or substrate for veld fires. Now, the period after 2000, we have seen an increase in the number of veld fires in terms of the incidences, as well as an increase in the area that is affected. And in the process, these veld fires, they do not just burn the grass. We have lost a lot of animals in terms of wildlife, livestock, and we have lost a lot of property in terms of be it residential property, as well as even infrastructure that is used for various purposes. Equipment, we have lost it. And sadly, we have lost a lot of lives, human life, in the process. So that's why now veld fires, they've become a topical issue. And when you have a veld fire incident, remember I said there are two secondary determinants. After a veld fire incident, it means there's no more food for our animals. So it's a serious catastrophe that we need to manage, and we have to take on board. We have to discuss about it and to take it seriously.
Sure. So what are the main causes of these veld fires?
If you look at the statistics, 61% of the fires occur in Africa, okay? And 41% occur in Southern Africa. So you see how big or the magnitude of the challenge that we are faced with. And it goes back to the issue that is just mentioned, that our environment, our vegetation is such that it should burn. Remember, when he was explaining, our environment is actually fire adapted. At one time, it should burn so that we maintain the ecosystem balance. So fires are not a bad thing. But the runaway fires, the uncontrolled fires, are the ones that we are looking at and affecting what we're doing now. So it takes us back to the issue of the causes that he was talking about. And the causes are human-induced. If you really look at it, they're not natural fires. And when you do have natural fires, normally lightning fires, you find that such a fire will occur soon after that lightning happens, it rains. So you're not going to have a lot of runaway fires. So in looking at that, that's the biggest challenge that we're looking at, the human factor. How do we deal with the human factor in terms of fires? Of course, the causes are one or two different. And another thing that is also driving fires, now this is a driver that we're looking at, the level of poverty in any country. You will find that human beings are rational beings. They'll say, look, I don't have food, I don't have this. So they turn to the environment. And so when they do that, some of them do it irresponsibly. They start fires because they want to hunt different animals. They want to clear their land. All this is being driven by the fact that we probably don't have the requisite equipment. For instance, when you're looking at land clearing that he was talking about, people are now using fire because they don't have cows, okay, for draft power. They don't have tractors. They don't have diesel. So they're saying, as a rational being, look, I need to eat, I need to feed, and I need to clear the land. So what I'll do is I'll use fire to clear the land and prepare it for the next season. So those are some of the dynamics around veld fires.
Sure. So what are the preventive measures we must take before the fire season?
Okay. Before the onset of the season, we must look at the important issues. State of preparedness. What is our state of preparedness? We're looking at if you've got a plot or a space, do you have fire guards, for instance? Do you have the requisite equipment? Do you have a communication system to say when there's a fire, who are you going to share? Are you trained in fire issues? Because you find that people would decide to go and stop a fire, but because they do not have the understanding, you find that one life is lost as a result of such trying to stop a fire. So it's important for people to be trained. It's important for them to have the important parts, which is the fire guard, the fire breaks. And then, of course, before the season, we also need to look at what we call cool burning, or just to reduce biomass beforehand. So there's a burning that we can actually do. And normally this happens before the fire season, which is the 31st in Zimbabwe, 31st of July. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Mugadza, what other preventive measures can we do before the fire season comes?
It's important that we become prepared, as he was rightly saying, infrastructure-wise, as well as in terms of our behavior and attitude. We need to be talking about these issues. We need to be reminding each other as families, as various groups. We need to be talking so that we do not have these runaway fires then occurring. And also, when necessary, when you want to use fire, as he was saying, in winter, May, June, when the temperatures are still low and even our grasses are is not very dry, that is the time when you can do so. Because as he was saying, fire is a tool that we can use to cure our land. Maybe you want to remove bush encroachment, or you want to, maybe your area has been infested by ticks or other pests that you wanted to get rid of. So that is the time you need to be doing so. And also you talked about fire breaks. These fire breaks, we have fire guards which are 9 meters, but we can also have patches that we can burn during this winter. Then when it comes to the dry season, in the event that it's unfortunate, we have a fire incident, then it will not spread through that area, because the fire does not burn through an area more than once in a year. So it's part of, we have to take fire as a management tool that we actively use and adaptively use, rather than for us to just wait, then it comes and destroys us.
Sure, sure. That's quite informative. So coming after the break, we discuss with our panel on what is being done to raise awareness on the impacts of veld fires. Join us after the break. Welcome back to the program. Before we talk about the awareness, let's talk about the effects of veld fires. So, Mr. Chimwedzi, what are some of the effects of veld fires?
I think I'll touch on one of the ones the one that really affects me when I think about it. One of the effects is loss of food security. Okay, I'll just intimate this. If we burn, normally when we burn, we burn habitat for things like our pollinators. Okay, those are the bees. So when we burn the habitat, our food colony, our bees, we lose the number of bees that we then use, that are used to pollinate our crops. So during a season where we have grown our maize and all that, we've given all the inputs that are necessary, but at the end of the season you find that at the end of the season the yield is very low. It's, in some instances, it's because the pollinators are no longer there. We have destroyed them. So the issue of food security, burning of food, like now we've had cases where people have just burnt wheat, 100 hectares of wheat. So that's the impact of fire from a community-based level. And you're looking at livestock, grazing. You've got livestock and you want to keep look after your livestock, but if there's no grazing and we've burnt it, that's the impact. And then in the next season, we're actually going to have low yields, low livestock, and all that is going to continue carrying on. And that, of course, he mentioned the issue of fatalities. Those are the impacts. And the loss of property. We see a lot of people losing their fences. And one of the impacts that people don't also realize is the smoke that is being emitted, or the emissions that are also occurring, are also affecting our health. And you find that people with hay fever, people with asthma, during this time of the season, you're actually seeing them complaining or having attacks because of these things. Because remember, the smoke, when it goes up, it will end up probably in our homes, end up on our roads. Like in the roads, we've even had cases where accidents occurred because there was poor visibility as a result of the smoke that had come as a result of a Veld fire. So those are some of the impacts that affect our communities and the people around us. And I know Liberty has got one or two that I haven't mentioned, but there are many, and we'll continue just mentioning them as we go.
Okay, so Mr. Mugadza, what are we doing to raise awareness in our communities, and what are the limitations and successes?
Okay, maybe I just need to just add one or two more on the effects of these Veld fires.
Sure.
You talked about burning habitats, but we also even burn the pollinators and as well as other animals themselves. Remember, our insects, they go through life cycles, egg, larva, pupa. So at times your butterflies will be in a certain stage. Then when we burn, they also die in the process. And let's remember, Zimbabwe, in the Eastern Highlands there, we have got very big industry, the timber industry, which is also under threat from these Veld fires. And let us remember that we have got quite a significant chunk that comes of our GDP that comes from tourism. Who wants to come to see a burned area? So the effects are quite a lot, which we can't even exhaust, because of the time. But Veld fires, they are not good for us. So what we are doing, the way our country is custodianship or stewardship of our environment is in the hands of the person who is at the land, be it the farmer, be it one who is called landlord or whatever. Is the person who is the government expects to take care of that piece of land. So people should be ready. So what we do as government, as well as with our partners like Firefight and others, we are doing quite a lot in terms of using various communication mechanisms to reach out to these people. We are using the print. We have got a lot of articles, publications that come through the mainstream print media. We use even the social media, Facebook, Twitter. We are trying to make sure that we get them where they are. When you go fishing, you go where the fish play. So we are trying to reach our various people in their various areas where they normally spend most of their time, workplace programs, so that we educate them. Because remember, the same person who is here during the week is the same farmer during the weekend, is the same traveler. So we are trying to make sure that we reach out to everyone, be it an urban dweller, be it a rural dweller, so that we sensitize them that during this time, let us be watchful of this catastrophe that can affect us and that can change even our life, and can even bring even sorrow to some families if we are not careful, because he talked about people dying, fatalities, they can arise. Yeah.
So I don't know, Mr. Chimwedzi, what other ways or measures are being taken so that we prevent firefight?
Okay, in terms of public awareness, it's a very important or a key issue for, especially if we're talking of firefight ourselves. In terms of our roads, there's a lot of interaction between the Veld fires and the roads, people traveling on those roads. And that's where we're also putting a lot of emphasis on putting communications along the roads. I think you've seen the fire danger rating signs where you see the colored telling us the position or the conditions such that at this condition you cannot start a fire. So that's messaging. Messaging is very important. We've seen now that through the interactions, our local RDCs, rural district councils, sending messages directly to SMS people living in the villages and those in different parts of the country. So I think without bringing in new thinking, but what already is being done is sufficient. We need to upscale, to do more and talk more. The way we're actually discussing, this is a form of awareness. If we could raise the bar more, get more people talking about this. I think one of the biggest challenges is the buy-in, okay? I'll challenge you. I'll ask you, for instance, when you, environmental issues, when they come to, in terms of priority, tend to be last in the line. I always challenge people when they go to the shops. You're going to buy food, your milk, your bread. But hardly do you find somebody saying, okay, on my budget, I'm going to buy a paper bag, plastic where I'll put my waste. Or I'm going to buy the requisite equipment to stop a fire. So that is the biggest challenge. So we are working towards trying to change the mindset that he talked about. People being more concerned about fire at any time. To say, okay, I've got a property. If I was living in the city, in the urban areas, obviously I'll put in an alarm to safeguard it from, and I'll put the extinguishers and I'll do all that. Do the same for your property out there. That is the language that we're trying to encourage. So there's no new thing that we're bringing in, but we're just upscaling the discussion so that people appreciate and are more concerned. If you lose a relative from a Veld fire, it's something that's going to change your life. Sure. Rather than get to that point, let's protect what we have got and also protect the environment that we live in.
Sure. I also concur. People need to to be very, very careful and watchful of the fire. So thank you very much for staying tuned to People and Earth. Join us after the break. Welcome back to People on Earth. Before the break, we were talking about preparedness and awareness of Veld fires. Now, Mr. Chimwedzi, do we have the requisite legislation to deal with these fires?
I'm honored that you're asking me, but our policy makers are here. We have Emma to speak on that one. But I'll just say something on a global scale. The policy in Zimbabwe is there, but fire is transboundary. So I think one of the things that we need to work on is to get a transboundary policy where maybe Southern Africa are speaking together. I say so because you'll find that we said that 41% of the fires are occurring in Southern Africa. Angola is number 2 in the world, DRC number 3, Zambia number 4 in world ranking, and of course Zimbabwe is around 30. So there's a policy that needs to be drafted that speaks to these countries to say you have a universal challenge. How can you then address it so that when there's a fire in Zambia on our borders, Zimbabwe is also aware and is participating in trying to reduce those fires, because a fire is not located by borders. It will travel to any place, a person's place. So that's my input as far as policy is concerned.
Sure, Mr. Mukadzi.
Yes, the legislation we have got the Forestry Act. We have got Statutory Instrument number 7 of 2007, which talks to obligations, what people should do during a fire incident, then even after. So the legislation is there. What could be lacking, it could be the issue of how to then implement the various pieces of legislation. Because the most difficult thing to do is to identify the culprit. And you find that because of other fabrics within the community, it's not easy for one to then divulge to the policymakers or to law enforcers to say, this is the culprit, this is the one who started the Veld fire. Because there are implications after to say, okay, this is the person who made me to be arrested. This is the person who made the father, the head of family there to go to jail for the next 5 years.
Community
so
issues, yeah.
There are a lot of other issues that come into play when it comes to then implementing the various pieces of legislation. So where I think we should go as a nation is to have the value that we get from the land. Once we have the value, then we protect. But if we don't appreciate the actual value of our fields, the actual value of our land, then it creates that problem. You know, if you have got a big head of cattle, then you are jealous with the grass. If you keep bees, then you are jealous of the foliage. So if we do that, and if you have got a good crop use, then you make sure that it will not burn because you have something to protect. Even at your home, you put burglar bars to cover and protect the treasure inside. So that kind of thing, that's what we need to do in terms of field fire management.
Sure. So where are we lacking in the inadequacy of legislation or policy, poor policy implementation?
It's an issue of behavior change rather than policy. Because when we have a legislation whereby we have got a greater proportion on the wrong side, it means that policy, we need to bring our nation to the level that that policy protects us. Because our legislation is not there to punish us, but it's meant to protect. So when we have got a lot of people on the offense side, it means we need to bring them to the right level of expectation. So that's why I was talking about the issues of now revaluing, so that the farmer on the land appreciates that the government has entrusted me with a big treasure and I need to protect it. And what am I benefiting from it? So when you have someone who can't till the piece of land he or she has, you've got 100 hectares, you're only utilizing 1 hectare, it means it creates a problem. But when we fully utilize that land, it becomes a treasure. So that's the issue we need to be managing and dealing with proper value as well as proper behavior.
What's our state of preparedness to deal with the Veld fires? Are we prepared as a country?
That's a difficult question to say. At government level and policy level, you'll find that people are prepared. That the EMA is prepared to respond, Zimpax is prepared to respond, forestry is prepared to respond. But it's at the grassroots level where we are finding challenges. And this is why we're saying more awareness, so that they are aware that you have a property to look after. It is not EMA's job to stop a fire, neither Forestry Commission or Zimpax. That is when we look at the law. It is the landowners owners to stop a fire. In fact, it's not just the landowner. And even those who are in the community who see a fire are sanctioned to assist to stop a fire. So the education part is very critical, and that's where we are saying, let's train people. So in terms of preparedness, in answering your question, you'll find that it's neither here or there. It's a 50-50 thing. You'll find that there are places where you find farmers who've been farming for many years who do not have the requisite fire guards or do not have the tools. So it's a bit of a challenge in terms of that. Government is playing its part, communicating, but those on the ground have issues. But just in adding the state of preparedness, funding fire issues are also a big challenge. And this is where we take it back again to government, that we also need that aspect of funding such so that our state of preparedness can be sound at a given stage.
Sure. So I understand that Africa contributes to 60% of global fires. Are we being affected by global warming, or we are inducing global warming?
It's actually a chicken and egg situation. Our actions are inducing global warming. But global warming is also contributing to the level of dryness or curing. So you find that if it's warm, our foliage, our vegetation would be very dry. And then we experience runaway fires. And also when we do burn, we also induce it, because when we release the carbon that we release, it also goes to participate in the greenhouse gas effect, where it's increasing the temperature, the global temperatures. So it's a chicken and egg situation. On one side, it's causing, and on the other, it's being caused by.
Sure. So as we end the program, Mr. Mgadza, what are your final thoughts about Veld fires in Zimbabwe as well?
We encourage our people, those who are in custody of the land, to be more vigilant, especially during now when we have got our grass already dry and we already experiencing the field fires. We need to be more vigilant. And those who have not prepared their land, like putting on fire gas, this is the time to quickly do so. And also acquire requisite firefighting equipment, fire cans, fire beaters, so that they are ready to deal with the fires in the event of an incident.
Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing with us such information with us. I hope people have learnt a lot from you. Thank you so much for joining us today on People on Earth. We hope you have learnt a thing or two from our discussion. Join us next week, same time, same place, and remember to stay green.